champion in my weight class? 55 and 70.
55's Khabib.
Okay.
70's Kamaru Usman.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be nice.
I feel like I'm just better and cooler than those guys. The hell do I want to fight them for?
This guy's last two brain cells went into overdrive when he tries to speak coherently. But boy, oh boy, does he know how to fight.
An athlete, a warrior, we should always be ready to fight everybody on our worst days. And I want to give a shout out to my brother Nick Diaz, the man, the main man. They're the new king of this motherfucker now, and it's right here, all right?
A real gangster dominating the UFC, beating everyone in his path. Born on April 16, 1985 in Stockton, California, Nate grew up in a world that was as rough as it was real. Stockton, notorious for its high crime rate, gang violence, and economic struggles, shaped much of who he would become. Nate and his siblings lived in a modest one-story house in Lodi, just north of Stockton. His family wasn't well off, and his childhood was anything but luxurious. Nate is the middle child, with an older brother, Nick, and a younger sister, Nina. Their mother, Melissa Diaz, raised them, while their father remains an elusive figure in the story of Nate's upbringing. School life didn't suit Nate. He attended Tokay High School, but was far from an academic standout. His energy was drawn elsewhere, particularly to the world his older brother, Nick, was immersing himself in, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One defining moment came during a schoolyard brawl just off campus, with the whole student body as witnesses. Nick, who had already left school, was there too. The fight ended in a draw, but the experience changed Nate's trajectory. The next day, Nick dragged him to the gym, calling his performance embarrassing. Nate resisted at first, but eventually gave in. That reluctant step into the gym marked the start of an unexpected career. Nick was training to become a fighter, and Nate, just 2 years younger, followed him into this rigorous, demanding world. Together, they began honing their skills that would define their lives. The brothers trained under Cesar Gracie, a legendary figure in the BJJ community. Nate's introduction to the gym wasn't smooth. He struggled early on, often overwhelmed by the intensity of the training. But he stuck with it, not just out of determination, but also because of a quirky motivator. The older fighters would buy burritos for him and Nick from a nearby food truck after practice. For a kid growing up with limited means, this small gesture kept him coming back. And over time, the grind paid off. This was around 2000, back when MMA was still an outlaw sport, banned in many states and far from the polished spectacle it is today. For the Diaz brothers, fighting wasn't a calculated career move, but a natural extension of their lives. They were drawn to the rawness of it, training in jiu-jitsu while embracing a streetwise mentality that set them apart. Their fighting style, skillful, relentless, and infused with the gritty spirit of their Stockton roots, made them fan favorites. Unlike many MMA stars who come from disciplined athletic backgrounds, the Diaz brothers brought chaos to the cage. They trained hard and earned black belts in jiu-jitsu, but their approach was more about attitude than polish. The infamous Stockton slap became their signature, a strike meant to mock and demoralize opponents rather than knock them out. They were also unflinching in their willingness to take punishment. As Jorge Masvidal famously said,
You literally gotta kill that dude.
Nate's amateur career began when he was still a teenager, and it quickly became clear he wasn't just following in his brother's footsteps. He was carving out his own path. His first recorded fight, at just 17 years old, showcased two of the trademarks that would come to define him: the infamous Stockton slap and his razor-sharp submission skills. That match against Robert Lyman set the tone for what was to come. By 2006, Nate had joined World Extreme Cage Fighting, WEC, where he made waves alongside Nick, who was already making a name for himself. Though Nate didn't capture a title in the promotion, he became a fan favorite, always bringing a raw, unfiltered energy to the cage. His final fight in WEC, a title shot, ended in a submission loss. but it was far from the end. In fact, it was just the beginning, as Zuffa's acquisition of WEC paved the way for Nate's UFC debut. Nate's rise in the UFC began with The Ultimate Fighter 5, where he immediately stood out. His no-nonsense attitude, coupled with an entertaining fighting style, made him a standout personality on the show. He fought his way to the top, eventually defeating Manvel Gamburian to secure his place in the UFC. From there, his career took off. Early wins showcased his elite jiu-jitsu skills, and his entertaining persona kept the spotlight on him. Despite some losses, Nate became one of the most compelling figures in the sport, headlining events and delivering unforgettable performances against top-tier opponents. Wins over names like Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone, Rory Markham, and Jim Miller solidified his reputation as a fighter who could finish anyone on any given night. But it was his rivalry with Conor McGregor that catapulted Nate Diaz into global superstardom. By this point, Nate had spent nearly a decade in the UFC, battling the best in the business. Then came the opportunity to face McGregor, the UFC's golden boy, in a fight that no one expected Nate to win. But Nate, with his trademark grit and defiance, shocked the world. In a fight filled with drama, skill, and trash talk, Nate handed McGregor his first UFC loss. His post-fight words, "I'm not surprised, motherfuckers," became legendary.
How's that feel? Hey, I'm not surprised, mother.
Echoing across the MMA landscape. Though McGregor would win the rematch, their rivalry cemented Nate's place as one of the sport's most unforgettable figures. Nate's career wasn't just about rivalries and victories. He was a pioneer in other ways too. He fought across multiple weight classes, from lightweight to welterweight, and even competed in catchweight bouts. He and Nick became outspoken advocates for cannabis use, often lighting up publicly and promoting their licensed line of marijuana products. They challenged the norms of the sport, refusing to conform to anyone's expectations. Nate Diaz was the epitome of unpredictability in MMA. The guy once lit up a joint during a UFC press conference like it was a casual backyard barbecue. Another time, after storming out of a botched contract negotiation, he relieved himself outside next to a dumpster. He's the same fighter who pulled off an incredible triangle choke submission mid-fight while flipping off the broadcast cameras, earning Joe Rogan's famous call, "Dumble fingers in a fully locked triangle." Then there's the time he and Jorge Masvidal inspired the UFC to create the one-off baddest belt, a spectacle so massive that Donald Trump, of all people, became the first sitting U.S. president to attend an MMA event. Though the fight ended in a doctor stoppage due to a nasty cut above Nate's eye, his resilience and toughness were on full display. Despite the loss, fans were left in awe of Nate's unyielding spirit. His UFC career has been a wild ride, filled with highs, lows, and everything in between. Yet, through it all, he's remained true to himself, a fighter from Stockton who never backed down from a challenge. As fans, we can only sit back and marvel at the legacy he's built, wondering what the next chapter will hold for this one-of-a-kind fighter. True to form, even this finale came with drama, though not of Diaz's making. He was originally slated to face the undefeated Khamzat Chimaev, but Chimaev missed weight by a mile. In response, the UFC scrambled to find a replacement, offering Ferguson as a last-minute substitute and sweetening the deal for Diaz. Suddenly, on his way out, Diaz held the UFC over a barrel, fitting conclusion to a career defined by defiance. Completing his UFC contract might be Diaz's most significant victory, more impressive than any fight inside the octagon. The UFC, notorious for locking fighters into ironclad deals, rarely lets a star escape unscathed. Yet Diaz, with his renegade spirit, managed to walk away on his terms, something even Hall of Famers with armies of lawyers have failed to do. In many ways, Diaz is an anomaly, both in the sport and in life. This mix of unpredictability, authenticity, and sheer grit has made Diaz a legend. His record of 22-13 might not scream greatness, but his fights have always delivered drama. Over a 4-year stretch earlier in his career, he racked up 10 fight and submission of the night bonuses in 14 bouts. His 2016 victory over Conor McGregor, taken on with just 11 days' notice, cemented his place in MMA lore. Dropping 20 pounds in under 2 weeks, Diaz weathered McGregor's early onslaught and secured a shocking submission. His post-fight declaration, "I'm not surprised," became an iconic moment, immortalized in murals and celebrated by the California State Assembly. Diaz's appeal lies in his refusal to conform. He's never cared about being marketable or likable. In his words, "I'm not just listening to you unless you understand what I'm doing." This defiance extends beyond the cage. He's turned down fights, sat out for years, and focused on triathlons instead of chasing fame. Despite his rough-edge persona, he's a vegan and has admitted, with typical humor, that he doesn't know what the word irony means. What do you think about Nate's incredible career? Let us know your thoughts below and make sure to stay tuned for more updates on this epic showdown.